Every once in a while, I will refer to a stand as one of my favorites, and more, I've been seeing comments asking, well, in xForts, who is your favorite stand, or what are your top favorite stands? JoJo is filled with unique stands that some people adore and others can't stand, be it for design, ability, or just the overall quality and enjoyment of the arc or part that the stand appears. Or people like stands not based off anything reasonable, but just for the sole fact that you like the stand's musical reference, which I myself am guilty of when it comes to stands like I Am a Rock and Marilyn Manson, which in my opinion would be forgettable stands if it wasn't for my affinity of the music in which the stands are in reference to. It's always fun to talk about your favorites, so today, let's talk about my favorite stands in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Main JoJo stands always seem to be fan favorites, be it because of their generally appealing designs or overpowered abilities, dealing justice to a majority of the villains in their respective parts. I have never really been a huge fan of stands with overpowered abilities, with only a few exceptions. I find it much more enjoyable to see a stand with a weaker, or just very specific ability find a path to victory through psychological means, or situational and environmental advantages more so than victory through sheer force and durability. And of course a stand that just goes completely against the norm. So getting into my favorite stands, we have the only one on my list that is possessed by a main JoJo, Johnny Joestar's Tusk. Tusk was truly a breath of fresh air, as it was incredibly unique, being the only other stand besides Echo's that grew and evolved alongside its user's character in the form of Axe, as well as Tusk breaking the standard of main JoJo's having punch ghost stands, well, except for Act 4. But for a majority of Steel Ball Run, Tusk was a fairly weak stand that Johnny had to learn how to use alongside the spin technique, as Tusk was a stand that was heavily connected to the spin because of how interested Johnny was in learning it when he manifested Tusk. And I mean, shooting your fingernails as bullets and being able to spin anything infinitely is a pretty damn cool variety of abilities. Design-wise for Tusk, I thought Act 1 looked a bit too slimy and soft, like it was an animal newborn or even a fetus. Act 2 proposed a very sudden change from organic to mechanical, but in general, I think it was an improvement. Act 3 is absolutely terrifying and was a mistake, but Act 4, in my opinion, is by far the best design of all previous acts and one of the best designs in the series in general, creating a perfect hybrid between Steel Ball Run's western setting while still very much looking like a stand with an astronomically powerful ability. And since Steel Ball Run is what I would consider my favorite part at this moment, it's of course going to contain more than one of my favorite stands. Sugar Mountain Spring is not only a favorite stand of mine, but also very high on my list of favorite story arcs in the whole series. Sugar Mountain Spring is a stand I have always shouted my praise for, as it's one of the more unique arcs lacking a direct enemy stand user, having our protagonist working against a location based on the nature of the stand's ability being based off the Greek fable, the Golden Axe, but of course altered to fit perfectly in the world of JoJo and stands. So now on for the last stand in my elite selection considered favorites from Steel Ball Run, and it's none other than Funny Valentine's Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Needless to say, if you have read Steel Ball Run, D4C is an incredibly appealing stand from its absolute ability, which is usually activated in a very stylish manner, and the stand's simple and elegant, yet menacing design. And not to mention, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap is probably the coolest name for a stand ever if you're a fan of AC/DC, and its abbreviation to D4C only makes it sound cooler. So even though D4C is very much conventional, being a very strong humanoid stand possessed by a main villain, it's just too badass to not adore. And the user being Funny Valentine only gives me more of a reason to love this stand. So now to move on from Steel Ball Run stands, let's talk about my favorite JoJolian stands. Or rather just one JoJolian stand, Paisley Park. One thing about Yasuo's Paisley Park that always made me love this stand is its design, as it's pretty much just Yasuo herself having the same exact hair and body type, only a bit larger and a bit thicker, but of course the obvious GPS theme covering its entire body. I've really enjoyed seeing this stand's ability grow and continue to unfold over time as Yasuo learns how to control her Paisley Park in order to access what otherwise would be locked away indefinitely, and maybe see more of what the stand is capable of in the future. There are quite a few other JoJolian stands that I'm interested in and have potential to make their way into my favorites depending on how their abilities change or how they are used in the future, like Jobin's Speed King, which for some reason has a design and ability that always piques my interest, especially when it's alluded to that there may be more to it than we have seen. Hado's Walking Heart is another stand whose ability I would like to see more of, but JoJolian seems to have a trend of characters just disappearing shortly after they do something to progress the plot. So now jumping back to the original universe, we have a stand I think everyone enjoyed for one reason or the other, and that is Weather Report and Heavy Weather. Weather Report's ability of controlling the weather is of course not an ability unique to JoJo, but rather has been explored many times in all sorts of fictional works, be it Japanese manga, Western films, or just one's imagination. I'm sure everyone has wanted to control the weather at one point or another, whether it be rain on a lazy afternoon or sunshine on the first day of summer. Although Weather Report was most often used for combat, it did it in an extremely badass manner, and it is a simple but attractive stand design being made out of stormy clouds forming a humanoid appearance that I must admit is very bland and simple, but it fits the theme of the stand. And as for Heavy Weather, I've always favored it over Weather Report because it's an automatic and uncontrollable stand that Weather didn't even know he had, that simply just created chaos, turning its affected area upside down and, well, quite literally into snails. It doesn't get much more bizarre, and that is why I consider Weather Report and Heavy Weather among my favorite stands in JoJo. You can probably tell by the aforementioned stands that I prefer stands from later parts of JoJo, much more so than the earlier parts. I mean, don't get me wrong, parts 3 and 4 do have some really enjoyable stands like Silver Chariot, The World, Killer Queen, Stray Cat, Superfly, that at the time were all in my favorites, but over time with the introduction of new stands, they just continued to fall, but I thought I might as well mention those that used to be my favorite for those of you who have not yet made it to the later parts of JoJo. Because when I finished part 4, I can almost guarantee you I considered Killer Queen my favorite stand because of Kira, explosions, and Queen. So finally, onto the last couple of stands on my list that have just so happened to reside within part 5 of JoJo, which in my opinion is the best part of JoJo when it comes to pure violent stand battles. And who other to use their stand for extremely violent fights than the main villain of the part, Diavolo with his King Crimson. Main villains are always made to have menacing but still appealing stands, and King Crimson quite literally just worked. I feel its design and ability truly reflected its user or users and the overall themes of the part in general to a T, and was one of the most appropriate stands for the user, especially when looking at how the stand's musical reference related itself to the user Diavolo. But besides the stand's design and ability, one of my favorite aspects of King Crimson is the situations it would create, where you never know where things could completely change in a split second, and no one is safe within its presence, making for some of the most tense and suspenseful interactions in the whole series. King Crimson really is a stand I find hard to think of any reason why it wouldn't be one of my favorites. And one little quirk from King Crimson that still pops into my mind every time I talk about the stand is how reflective it is of its user and the facial expressions that it would show when we weren't able to see Diavolo's. But now finally onto my all-time favorite stand in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Bruno Bucciolati's Sticky Fingers. Most of you probably already know this because I've never really kept it a secret when people ask in comments and Twitch chat. Ever since I first read part 5, I knew Sticky Fingers was my favorite stand almost immediately after its ability and full appearance was revealed. And since reading part 5, there just hasn't been another stand I liked more than the Zipper Man. Nothing really even comes close. I found everything about the stand extremely appealing. Its simple yet versatile and well-balanced ability is pretty much everything I myself would want from a stand. And its design is also nothing that really stands out, but rather, again, simple and related to the ability. The idea of a stand ability being based off something as mundane as a zipper is just so damn cool, and it has even inspired my sense of fashion, as I found myself, after being introduced to this stand, more enticed to buy clothing littered with zippers. Even my shoes have zippers on them now, all because of this stand. Also, Bucciolati is one of, if not my favorite character in all of JoJo, so it's no surprise I like his stand just as much. So those are my favorite stands in all of JoJo. I know some people like lists, so I threw the stands I mentioned in this video into a ranking system based on design, ability, and the stand's relation to the user out of 30 points. Of course, some stands rankings kinda got thrown off like Sugar Mountain Sprain, as the stand has no user. So that brought its score down, but that's why I don't really like top 10 lists in the first place. Let me know what your guys' favorite stands are and why, because there is a lot of stands in the series and people like different shit for different reasons. Also, if anyone has been wondering where I've been for the past week or so, I've been streaming almost every day over on my Twitch channel, so I highly encourage you to go follow on Twitch if you have been missing my content. As of the past couple weeks of streaming more regularly, we've built up a great community there, and I've just made tons of friends. So lately, I've just been having a bit more fun with Twitch than YouTube, but don't worry, I'll always be here making videos for you guys. So with that out of the way, like the video if I fought your boredom or if you just enjoyed, and of course subscribe for more videos.